I want to bring together a bunch of financial institutions and invest $100 billion in manufacturing plants for graphene. We're going to employ 5 million people in the United States, and we're going to be exporting a building material and superconductor, which is going to be in major demand around the world. That will massively increase benefit the U.S. economy.
Yeah, the Department of Defense is working with scientists at Rice University to pump this stuff out. Graphene, I think for every $4.50 of graphene, you get a kilogram of hydrogen fuel. And so they're making money to produce. Before it was like it cost $1, it cost $3 to make a kilogram of hydrogen. Now you're getting $4.50 to produce a kilogram of hydrogen. It's right in front of us. So I interviewed James Tour today, the leading chemist, one of the leading chemists on Earth that's producing this stuff. It's an hour of us talking about it. He gets really, we scratch the surface and do highly influential explanations. Go to my YouTube channel and check it out. It's the first video you'll see. It's James Tour. This guy's phenomenal. We're right on the precipice, man. Now we just got to hold it together and inspire people.
I'm kind of at a loss at what it is that you think graphene's going to do.
You can put it in cement. There's a lot of things. And you watch the video for if you want to hear more.
What does steel do?
Well, steel's used for all kinds of stuff. It reinforces concrete.
And graphene does that.
You can put it in concrete. It makes it lighter and 3 times more durable.
And it's so we use lithium-ion batteries for our phones. They're actually starting to create a graphene polymer or lithium graphene batteries. Graphene layer in the battery creates a what's the word?
A lattice.
A unilateral charge.
Okay.
So it charges from every point all at once, which charges the battery much more quickly.
So graphene conducts electricity?
It's a superconductor.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So whereas a cell phone would take 15 minutes to charge in the past, it'll now take 5. We now have we actually bought a bunch of these a year ago. Portable batteries. When you plug your phone in, it'll charge your phone from 0 to full in 10 minutes. I'm sorry. It can hold a full cell phone charge after only 10 or so minutes. Your phone, whether or not you have the graphene polymer batteries or the graphene lithium, I don't know, I forgot what it's called. But they're putting them in batteries. They think that this technology in electric car batteries means you'll pull your car up to the pump at the gas station, plug in the supercharger, and you'll literally watch the charge go up like a gas tank.
Wow. They were like, how do we make this stuff, graphene, for the last 20 years? How do we make it? Chemical vapor deposition. They're trying to deposit carbon dioxide onto copper and get it, and you get these strips. They figured out what's called flash joule graphene production. You hit it with electrical current. Any carbon on Earth, you can get all these different plastics. They used to have to recycle them and pull them apart because different plastics recycle differently. Any carbon, all the plastic together, human feces, plants matter, any carbon, and you hit it with electricity and you turn it into graphene. Right. And then this guy, I'm actually going to be interviewing the inventor, Dewey Long.
But let's bring it back to the debt, this country. My point is, I will go along with Ian on graphene for one reason. We need a manufacturing base. We need the American people working on raw materials that we can use to build infrastructure. Steel for a long time, not just steel. There's a lot of stuff we did in the United States. We should drill, baby, drill. We should invade Canada. I'm sorry. Well, we should invade. I'm in Alaska. But Canada, yes, too. I mean, I'm only half kidding. But no, we should invade and occupy Alaska. We should not waste here's what I think. When we go and blow up people overseas, what we are doing is we are creating a global economy as hollow as a fiat dollar. We provide you nothing other than don't screw with us. And these other countries say, your offers are hollow. We only need protection from you. If the U.S. said, okay, we are going to bolster our manufacturing, develop new technologies, create a very strong, robust middle class that works in development of new technology and new infrastructure and new raw materials and metamaterials. We occupy Alaska, using our own land to rare earth minerals, for instance, stop doing dealings with China. We would then become that shining city on the hill, and other nations would say, we got to be like them. We got to do business with them.
Yeah, and if we're don't have a global empire, we should be able to do those things without having this empire. You mentioned the CHIPS Act. So the problem with the CHIPS Act is that it's basically corporate subsidies, $50 billion, which is adding to the debt. I think the answer isn't subsidizing this industry, which is something, China does. I think we should, resort to more capitalism and deregulate and, give people tax incentives and to start factories. And, they're actually getting a lot of the Taiwanese companies to build factories.
The things that you're going to have to do to get people to start businesses like that is, I don't know the first thing about making chips or anything, but I mean, between unions, minimum wages, and the amount of things that you have to deregulate and pull back on, it's just astronomical. So whereas I understand and agree with your point, I don't think that it's that bad to have the government try to do things to tax breaks or whatever to incentivize companies to start it.
But they're giving them billions of dollars.
Check out,
$50 billion. That's a lot of money.
I'd rather them give it to a company in the U.S. than give it to Israel to drop bombs.
They're giving it to a lot of it's going to Taiwanese companies to bring them here, which I'm not sure the percentages, but I know some of it.
Because the big reason why we have companies that are doing things overseas and stuff is because of labor laws and because of regulations here. So if you can
environmental regulations,
if you can roll those back, then you could get. Then there's an incentive for companies to start. But as long as the federal government has the type of legislation or regulation that disincentivizes companies from starting, I mean, it's got to start it somehow.
And I want to correct you on one thing. Not really correct, but I want to counter. I want a strong, robust American empire that is achieved by being really cool, producing great products, being a great trade partner, not interfering in other countries' business and politics, but being so good at everything we do that they want to learn from us. We want other countries to say, let us know what you need. That new thing you guys are working on, your economy is really great. We all love America. We want to be like America. Your movies are awesome. We want to win through cultural means, not bombing children.
Yeah, culture and science. Those are my two favorites.
The U.S. empire uses force in a lot of different ways. If countries like elect a government that the U.S. doesn't like, they start putting economic sanctions on them, purposely to destroy their economy.
Yes, but let's be fair. The U.S. also removes that government by force and then puts in a sock puppet government.
Sometimes, right. But other times they just sanction the hell out of them.
Yeah.
And, that's part of the reason why, the U.S. on the global stage right now, if you're like a developing country and you see the way the U.S. operates, especially now, all for the past year and a half, you had Blinken, Biden talking about, lecturing Russia on the war in Ukraine, talking about this rules-based order. And now we see them fully backing Israel as they're just blowing up kids, and everybody can see it for themselves. But it's just like the hypocrisy is very obvious to other countries.
But the funny thing about Russia and Ukraine is Russia is having a territorial dispute with a neighboring country. The United States flew to the other side of the planet to invade Iraq and Afghanistan.
It's true.
And why was Iraq invaded? Well, I guess it was WMDs, but 9/11 was kind of the pretext. Why was Afghanistan invaded? Well, because the Taliban were harboring Osama bin Laden. So we had to go and build a nation there. And then Russia invades a neighboring country over a border dispute. And we're like, whoa, hey there, wait a minute.
Condoleezza Rice, like a few days after, sorry if I got a little worked up there, Ian, you looked a little startled.
I'm so into this.
Condoleezza Rice, a few days after Russia invaded, was on TV and was like, I forget exactly what she said, but Condoleezza Rice of the George W. Bush administration said, a country cannot invade another sovereign nation or something like that. And do you remember George W. Bush's little Freudian slip or whatever it was? He was giving a speech and he was like, one man's decision to invade Iraq,
that was amazing.
Ukraine. And then he kind of laughed and he was like, yeah, Iraq too. That was a moment, man. I watched that video like 100 times. Because
this country is full of shit,
it's definitely somewhere in his brain. But
the founding fathers, I think if they saw what was going on, they'd be like...
They'd be stacking bodies.
They'd be like, no, hold on. Where are your businessmen in politics?
It's like your grandfather being like, son, I gifted you this really nice car and you totaled it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I want to stress this point too. The founding fathers notoriously just petitioned over and over again. And I think it's fair to say it was not the Americans who started the Revolutionary War. It was the British imposing tyranny. Like, if we go straight to Lexington and Concord, they said, hand over your guns or else. The Americans, the founding fathers were like, I'm going to write a strongly worded letter to the king. And the king's like, screw off. Well, I'll write another letter to the king. And it was a year and a month after Lexington and Concord, they signed the Declaration of Independence. So it's not like the Americans were like, it's time to stack bodies. They were like, please, we're just trying to have some representation here.
Fair enough, but Washington did cross the Delaware and kill everybody in their sleep. So,
but that's in the war. My point is,
that was later on.
America may be rebels, but when we started, we were not the dudes who decided to go and kill other people. We were the dudes who honorably and reasonably said, listen, what you're doing is not working, and we are telling you now this has to change. And if you don't listen to us, the change will come either way. And then it was the Crown that was like, we're going to come and put you down. And then we said, we didn't start it, you did. They came to Lexington and Concord and they said, we are going to come at you. It was not Americans who went to England to fight. It was the Crown sending regulars to the colonies saying, we are going to impose our will from overseas on you
100%.
And brought the guns and then demanded of the Americans. I think that the founders of this country were calm, rational, reasonable people who understood war was bad. They did not want foreign entanglements. I love reading about the Barbary Wars and Thomas Jefferson and like, he's like, we don't want to be involved in any of this stuff. Why are you attacking us?
What are the Barbary Wars? This is cool.
Pirates, North Africa, and Jefferson and other founding fathers, Adams, they're all basically just saying like, look, man, we're just selling stuff. We have no problem with any of you. Why don't you leave us alone? And they were like, screw you. We do what we want.
They said in England, they said to the United States representative, they said the Quran gives us the approval and authorization to kill you and take your stuff because you are infidels. And so Thomas Jefferson created the United States Marine Corps, and that was the response was send in the Marines. So the Marines have been fighting for the country for as long as there has been a country.
This is the Barbary Wars, series of 2 wars fought by the United States, Sweden, and the Kingdom of Sicily against the Barbary states, Tunis, Algiers, and Tripoli.
Yeah.
And
so
Morocco.
You made a point. Sorry.
The United States Marine Corps, the Marine Corps hymn, there's the line that says, to the shores of Tripoli.
Yep.
That's what it's referencing.
Yep.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, the Marine Corps fought for the United States.
That's a good song.
Yeah, it's all right. I like it.
I remember you made the point before we started recording that like you favor, the U.S. could have a strong Navy and kind of police the waters a bit and work with their trading partners to counter piracy. And I think that is a completely legitimate, foreign policy to have, just to have a Navy and fight piracy with your trading partners. But we're just so far from that. We're meddling in every country around the world. We're not anything close to that. A lot of people like to point to the Barbary Wars as an example of how the founding fathers actually were not, non-interventionists, but they were responding to their property, being attacked.
Yeah, they were.
So
it
is completely
protecting
different.
Americans. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is completely different analogy from what you were talking about how the British brought the war here.
My point was, the founding fathers' attitude was like, hey, let's just mind our own business. We're going to do our thing here. You leave us alone. And now the mentality of the United States is, we offer nothing but we take.
Yeah.
So what I imagine the United States is doing with the current empire, it's like a piece of bubble gum. It's being blown up and blown up and blown up, but we know what happens. Eventually, it gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and then it pops. There is nothing within this bubble. It is hollow. The United States cannot exist by simply going out with guns and saying, we get to do this. We can invade Iraq and Afghanistan, but Russia better not invade anybody else. To be fair, Russia shouldn't invade Ukraine. But the U.S. has no moral leg to stand on. What the U.S. should do, the U.S. should have some type of, whatever you want to call it, empire, in the sense that we are so good, our laws are just, our people are fat and happy. I mean that figuratively. Our economy is great, and it's done through production, it's done through trade, it's done through technological development. And then what happens? People will be jealous because we're rich. That always happens. But we're not blowing up kids. We're not amoral crackpots. Our money isn't being siphoned away from us. Our economy is expanding. Our families are happy. Our kids are happy. Our roads are taken care of. Our infrastructure is taken care of. And other countries are like, we need to be like them. And look how well they're doing. You want to spread democracy or whatever it is you call it? That's how you do it. You show up in a country with guns and then kill the elderly and then try to raise a new generation, and you get Afghanistan. Doesn't work.
I love it. I think that the United States, China, and Russia have a duty to protect the planet, especially the Arctic. It's so important. We're right on the brink.
One thing back to the British, like bringing the war to America. When we talk about Ukraine, I mean, for so long, Putin and the Russians were telling, the U.S., like, stop doing what you're doing. Stop it. And, in the weeks and months leading up to the invasion, almost a year before, they were, massing troops, and they submitted these security proposals. They wanted NATO to be rolled back. They wanted a guarantee that Ukraine would never join NATO. And the U.S. just said no, basically, to their main demand of Ukraine joining NATO. A State Department official admitted this in an interview shortly after the Russian invasion. And so, and I'm not, justifying Russia's invasion, but it is very clear how the U.S. and the West provoked this thing. And that's the thing. That's on Russia's border. We can't even, we try to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. Could you imagine if Russia was funding a war in Canada, like there was a civil war there, and then we intervened and Russia started sending them missiles and intelligence? There was just a report in the Washington Post that said the CIA in 2015 started building up Ukraine's intelligence services, the SBU and the GUR, which is their military intelligence, to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. And they were basically saying that because of that support, Ukraine's able to kill people inside Russia. They pointed to the car bombing of Daria Dugina. Do you guys know who she is?
Yeah, of course.
The daughter of Alexander Dugin that the Ukrainian SBU did. They basically pointed to that, saying they're able to do this because of the CIA.
And the statue that exploded. Do we know what that was about? Do you remember that? There was a internet personality in Russia. Someone brought in a small bust of his head.
That was in St. Petersburg
Cafe. Exploded. Yeah,
that was them too. That report said it was them. And, it closed with a very ominous quote from like a former CIA official, basically saying like, what have we created here? What if they start killing people in third countries? What if, like the blowback from this Ukraine war could be very serious.
It's going to be like Afghanistan. It is going to be like the Mujahideen. It is Ukraine is now, what was it? The Republicans pass a funding bill for Israel, but not Ukraine. They're saying it's going to be dead in the Senate. Joe Biden, here, let me pull the story up. Post-millennial, Biden admin announces additional $425 million military package to Ukraine. So we have weaponized and armed Ukraine, but Ukraine is losing. The appetite for funding this is on the decline, and we've got an election coming up. What do you think happens to the extreme, I'm not saying extremist, I'm saying like very fervent national militia groups in Ukraine who are funded and trained by U.S. forces when the U.S. pulls out and says you're on your own? You talk about the fear of bombings in third countries, other outside of Russia and stuff, 100%. And then what happens? Give it 20 years, and you've got trained armed groups in Ukraine who hate the United States for some reason or another, and you get Al-Qaeda all over again.
Yeah.
In some form or another.
There's, because you hear the Russians talk about the Nazis in Ukraine, but there is a real neo-Nazi element in Ukraine. It's not huge, but it is very influential, and there are certain groups. So there was like these raids going on in Russia that were done by this group called the Russian Volunteer Corps. They were Russian people that were fighting, went over to Ukraine in 2014 to fight for them. And they're like openly neo-Nazi.
Wow.
And they had American armored vehicles. So you had a group of neo-Nazis basically invading Russia. And I think this was Belgrade. They tried this a few times. They didn't get much done. But you have a band of Nazis invading Russia with American weapons. Like, again, try to put yourself... we can't even imagine something like that happening to the US.
The Russians.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.